Across all the comic book themed movies we've gotten over the years, you'd think that at some point the writers would eventually run out of villains to use, but you would be wrong. Even though we've seen the likes of hundreds of villains, there are still a number of them who are yet to make their silver screen debut. What is going on, all you nerdy folk out there? My name is Jack, and today we're going to be talking about some villains that we all know need to be on the big screen one day. I'll also be giving my own thoughts on how these characters could be integrated into their respective cinematic universes, but it is all just speculation, so do not take my word for it. Unless I turn out to be right, then I knew it all along and you should always listen to me. Anyways, enough of that, let's get right into it. Number 10, the Fearsome Five. This one is definitely one that I really want to see because bringing the Teen Titans into the DCEU would be the best thing ever. A group of villains gathered by Dr. Light consisting of Mammoth, Jinx, Nano, and Rumble to take down the Teen Titans. This group is a rowdy one to say the least. On Prime Earth, after the crime syndicate supposedly killed the Justice League, the Fearsome Five were assembled at Happy Harbor and invited to join the secret society. We've seen them go up against the likes of many superheroes and hero teams throughout the years, the most prominent of course being the Teen Titans. Having made appearances throughout many of DC's animated shows like, Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go, it is needless to say that these characters are fairly well known at this point and deserve some time in the spotlight. Now this is pretty far away since we haven't been introduced to any of the Teen Titans in the DCEU other than some throwaway remarks about Robin, meaning we'll have to wait for their origin stories first before we see these five appear. I feel like they would pop up in the first movie as like sub-villains to Trigon or maybe Slade Wilson, and then would have a bigger role in the second installment. If you agree or disagree with me, let me know in the comments below how you think they could be introduced. Number 9, Strife. With the introduction of Cable in Deadpool 2, this one might be possible, or at least I hope the writers are considering it for future Deadpool and X-Men movies. Now if you're not familiar with Strife, he is the clone of Deadpool's BFF Cable and has been a major thorn in not only their sides, but the X-Men's as well ever since his first appearance in 1990's New Mutants number 87. After Nathan Summers is infected by a techno-organic virus as a baby, he's taken to the distant future by Askani to be cured and hopefully saved. As a backup plan in case things went wrong, Askani actually cloned the baby and it ended up being kidnapped by Apocalypse and raised as his own, as he intended to use that baby, turned out to be Strife, as his next host. Growing up with such a terrible role model, Strife grew into a murderously decadent brat with no regard for life, and then fast forward a bit and we see him as the anarchist rebel wanting nothing but vengeance on his real parents, Cable and Apocalypse. With all the same powers as his genetic template, Strife is classified as an Omega level mutant since his telepathic and telekinetic abilities are vastly superior to Cable's, since he does not have to devote a portion of them to keeping the techno-organic virus at bay. How might they bring this character to the big screen? Well, I imagine that it will start with a short cameo or offhand mention in a future Deadpool movie, but he wouldn't be fully revealed or introduced until a Cable solo movie comes around. As for who would play the role, it would probably still be Josh Brolin since he already plays Cable, unless he also has a twin brother who's into acting. In that case, bring him onto the project, why not? But in the meantime, to tide yourself over, give his full story a read for yourself and let me know what you think. Number 8, Starfire. Now I'll be the first to admit I mostly just want this villain to appear in a movie because that means we might get another reboot of the Green Lantern. Don't get me wrong, I love Ryan Reynolds to death and he did a great job with what he was given, but he is no Hal Jordan. But anyways, Carol Ferris was the president of Ferris Aircraft and is actually the one who hired Hal onto the team. She fell in love with him fairly early on, and that has saved her from herself many times throughout the years, as she often loses herself to these Zamarans brainwashing techniques. As a Violet Lantern, her powers are made possible because she is capable of great love, and thanks to the Violet Power Ring, she can create hard-like constructs. That accompanied with her super strength and Star Sapphire gem that she possessed for a period of time when she was the mortal queen of the Zamarans, makes her a worthy foe of the Green Lantern. Now, like I said, she will likely be introduced in a future Green Lantern reboot, if we ever get one, and I imagine she'll be first introduced as Hal's love interest in the first movie, and then in the second movie she'll gain her powers and start her reign of terror. Her introduction would actually set the scene for a lot of bigger storylines down the road since she's played such a big role in stories such as The Blackest Night and The War of the Green Lanterns. Let me know who you think should play her in the DCEU. Many fans are pushing for Elizabeth Gillies or Megan Fox, but you never really know who they're actually going to land on. For now though, she is stuck in the comic book universe, so check her out for yourself in her first appearance in 1959 Showcase number 22. Coming in at number 7, we have Solomon Grundy. With another Batman reboot in the works with Robert Pattinson in the iconic role as the Caped Crusader, this one could actually happen if they end up creating another trilogy. Now, if you don't know who Solomon Grundy is, don't feel too bad. He is not as prominent in recent years as he used to be. There are many different origin stories for this character, so let's go with the most common one. In the late 19th century, a wealthy merchant known as Cyrus Gold was murdered and his body was disposed of in Slaughter Swamp. He was then supernaturally reanimated 50 years later, where parts of his body were actually composed of the swamp material. With his new with zombie physiology and super strength, Grundy has proven to be a tough villain, especially since you can't really kill him since he's already dead. We've seen him go up against the likes of the Justice Society of America, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and so many more, so there are countless ways to bring him back to life, no pun intended. Although Grundy, in my opinion, is a big enough villain to warrant being the main villain of a future Batman film, I doubt that will actually happen since his popularity in recent years has gone down. Like, seriously, I was talking to some of my friends and they knew so little about the character other than the name, so what they might have to do is bring him in as a lesser one-off villain, and then, if he tests well, he'll likely move back into the spotlight. A lot of fans seem to think that Ron Perlman would be great in the role, and honestly, I agree. I think he's got the perfect look for the character and would definitely do the zombie justice. First appearing in 1987's History of the DC Universe #1, why not familiarize yourself with the story before we see him on the big screen? Number 6, Gorilla Grodd. Probably my favorite Flash villain ever, and one of the two characters I play as in the Injustice games, Gorilla Grodd is a staple villain in the DC universe, and even though we got a version of him in the CW's Flash TV series, I think we can do better. Hailing from Gorilla City in the jungles of Africa, Grodd was granted his incredible intelligence and mind powers after exposure to a meteor that crashed into Earth. No longer satisfied with the gorilla lifestyle thanks to his hyper-awareness, he ended up traveling to Central City and started wreaking havoc. However, he has always been pretty easily stopped by the Flash. With his telepathic and telekinetic powers, Grodd is able to control the minds of pretty much anything, and able to transfer his consciousness to other bodies for a period of time. And he can use it for offensive purposes as well, through his psychic wave bolts. I doubt we'll see or hear much of Gorilla Grodd until we see Ezra Miller's Flash solo movie that's set to be released in 2022. So little is known about the movie other than that Michael Keaton is rumored to be reprising his role as Batman, so who knows, we might get to see this character as the main antagonist. Since the character is mostly CGI and mocap, it's tough to cast the character. A lot of fans online have said they would like to see John Goodman or John DiMaggio in the role, but I'm not too sure if I agree. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1959's The Flash #106. I know I'll be giving his origins another read so I can decide on my dream casting. Number 5, MODOK. George Tarleton is the next on our list today. Before becoming the mental organism designed only for killing, or MODOK for short, George was a skilled technician and worked with AIM to create the Cosmic Cube. In order to study it properly, they genetically altered George into a super intelligent being known as the MODOK, but with a C that stood for computing. With a huge head now too big for his frail body and a seemingly endless intelligence, it did not take long before George turned that C to a K and killed his former partners. Since then, we've seen him take on the likes of Captain America and the Hulk using his psionic powers of superintelligence to create gadgets and create strategies. We actually did see karma come around for MODOK as he was supposedly killed by the Serpent Society. However, he was shortly after revived by AIM because they needed help with something that only he could figure out. Probably the most brutal version of MODOK that we've ever seen would be his appearance in World War Hulk, when he was able to fend off multiple Hulks at once while barely lifting a finger. Now, I'll be completely honest, I'm not entirely sure how they could bring this character to the big screen. He's been a major villain for so many characters in the MCU, it's kinda tough to decide. I know I'd love to see Rainn Wilson in the iconic role. He already has that perfect look and that perfect square head, but why not tell me your dream scenario and casting in the comments below. In the meantime, check out his first appearance in 1967's Tale of Suspense #93. Number 4, Carnage. Cletus Kasady, the notorious serial killer turned even more terrifying supervillain known as Carnage. While serving 11 consecutive life sentences in jail, Kasady is bonded with a portion of the symbiote spawn by having it enter into his bloodstream through a cut. With a violent nature even more prominent in his blood now, he escapes prison and wreaks complete havoc on anyone he can get his hands on as the villain Carnage. Now, we've seen a few iterations of this character, including Carl Malice as Superior Carnage and Norman Osborn as the Red Goblin, but none have ever come as close to the original in terms of malicious intent. Possessing basically the same powers as Venom and the other spider folk, such as super strength, wall crawling, and more, Carnage actually started out leaps and bounds above Spider-Man and Venom in terms of power. That, coupled with his vampirism, camouflage ability, and signature fangs and claws, makes him a villain I would never want to go toe-to-toe with. There are two ways we might get introduced to this character, and I think it's either going to be in one of Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies, or in one of Tom Hardy's Venom movie. Personally, I think it's way more likely that the character will be introduced alongside Eddie Brock, since the Venom movies already have a much darker tone to them, which would allow for a more authentic representation of the character. I know I would personally love to see Woody Harrelson in the role, but he is getting a little bit older, so fans online have been pushing for Cameron Monaghan, who you might know from Gotham. I know either would do an amazing job as a character, so I'm not too worried, especially considering no one knows when we'll see this character on the big screen. Appearing as Cletus Kasady for the first time in 1991's Amazing Spider-Man number 344, check him out as Carnage for the first time in Amazing Spider-Man number 360. Coming in at number 3, we have Scarecrow. This is the other character I play as in the Injustice games, by the way, just in case you were wondering. Jonathan Crane, the brilliant psychologist turned supervillain, is one of the most terrifying and layered villains in the DC universe. Crane lost his credibility as a psychologist after an experiment went wrong when he took everything a little bit too far and began his descent into madness. Taking up the name Scarecrow, he uses his immense knowledge of fear and anxiety to mess with his victims and seals the deal with his infamous fear toxin to torture them. When inhaled, this toxin forces the victim to hallucinate and imagine their worst fears as if it was reality. And just the thought of that completely terrifies me, and that is why I think he would be a perfect fit in a Batman film with a darker tone. Now, how he would be introduced is a bit tricky, as they could show his transformation into the Scarecrow, or they could have him introduced as the Scarecrow from the get-go, but either way, it just needs to happen. Bill Skarsgård should play this role hands down. He has shown he has the ability to play inherently creepy characters through It Part 1 and Part 2, so this really should be a no-brainer. Now, if you're not familiar with his backstory, check it out for yourself in his first appearance in 1987's Detective Comics number 571. Number 2, Darkseid. Now, I'm sure we're all familiar with Darkseid and how much damage he has caused in the DC universe. The ruler of the Nightmare World Apocalypse, Darkseid is a conceptual being that exists outside the normal universe in a realm called the Fourth World, and has been called the God of Evil, as there are very few beings in the multiverse capable of beating him. Darkseid has a ridiculous amount of powers thanks to his new god physiology and the Omega effect, including but not limited to Omega beams, matter manipulation, telepathy, superhuman strength, speed, and stamina, and so many more. He is also immortal since he is a god of apocalypse, with only other high-tier beings like Kryptonians and the Spectre able to kill him. Having first appeared in 1970's Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen number 134, and as an always prominent character in the DC universe, it's no surprise that Darkseid has caused some serious damage. Now, I know we're definitely going to see Darkseid on the big screen one day in all his glory, and since he is basically DC's Thanos, we'll likely see the Justice League face off against him in an all-out final battle that cultivates over a multitude of movies. As for who should play the role, this one is another tough one since the character will mostly be CGI, so I honestly have no idea who I'd want to see. If you've got any suggestions, let me know what you think, because I seriously can't think of anyone. And finally, number 1, the Skrulls. Marvel, you know that all we want is the Skrull War storyline to be adapted onto the big screen. Why are you making us beg for it? Now, if you're not familiar with the Kree Skrull War, let me try and catch up to speed so you can also bug Marvel's writers about it. But there's way too much information to go into extreme detail. Beginning in 1971, the Kree Skrull War storyline included a bunch of super teams like the Avengers, the Inhumans, and the Fantastic Four, and was centered around the return of Mar-Vell, the Kree hero who was the original Captain Marvel. Things only go downhill from Mar-Vell's entrance, and a bunch of different storylines spin out, one of which sees the Avengers fight Ronan the Accuser, ending in their reputation being ruined in the public eye, causing them to disband for a while. Now, although the Kree Skrull War itself spans across millennia in Marvel lore, this isn't the main reason they're fighting in this story. Basically, the Kree and the Kitati were competing to see who would be gifted Skrull technology, and when the Kitati were declared the winners, the Kree were pretty pissed and wiped them out alongside a few Skrulls, thus setting everything in motion. This war is actually what gave us the Inhumans, so I guess some good did come out of it, but it still wasn't a pleasant thing to be a part of. Having already kind of missed the opportunity to bring them into the light in the Captain Marvel movie, it doesn't seem too likely we'll see them anytime soon, but hey, you never know, right? Well, that'll be it for this video, everyone. Do you have any other supervillains you hope will grace the big screen one day? Let us know in the comments below, and maybe we'll continue this list with a part 2. Don't forget to subscribe to Top 10 Nerd to stay up to date on all things nerdy, and why not ring that notification bell so you know whenever we upload a video. As always, my name is Jack. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to stay nerdy, my friends.